Hello everybody, and a very warm welcome to our webinar today, an introduction to payrolling benefits in Sage 50 Payroll. My name's Duncan. I am hosting and presenting the session today, and I am joined by my colleagues Louise, Sarah and Steve, who are standing by in the background, ready and waiting to answer any of your questions. Let's now take a look at what we'll cover in the webinar. So I'm going to start things off with an introduction to payrolling benefits, explaining how that works under the current voluntary system. We're then going to give you some product demos, and we're going to explore benefit in kind pay elements, which will be used to process notional payments for the benefits that you provide, as well as company car records, where you can record details of cars you've provided to your employees and can also work out cash equivalent values and Class 1A values. We'll then put that all together and show you how you would process benefits as part of your payroll. And then we'll move on to finish the session with a look ahead to April 2027, which is when the mandatory payrolling of benefits comes into effect. And we're going to hear from our product manager, Steve Watmore, and he's going to share some thoughts around those upcoming changes. Let's get underway with our introduction, and we'll start with a bit of a definition and explanation of what is a benefit in kind. So benefits in kind, or BIKs, are goods and services provided to employees for free or at greatly reduced costs. So these are non-cash items, so they're not included in your employee's net pay, but they are of value, and they are usually considered part of an employee's taxable income. Now, this could include typically items such as company cars or private medical insurance, basically anything that you're currently reporting on a P11D, or some of you are currently payrolling. Now, when you provide these taxable benefits and expenses, you do have a duty to report the value of the BIKs to HMRC. And for some benefit types, you are also liable to pay employers' Class 1A national insurance on those amounts. So I have linked to the gov.uk guidance, providing an introduction to expenses and benefits for anyone who's perhaps new to this. Now, when it does come to reporting the expenses and benefits, there are currently two ways that this can be done. Now, traditionally, all of these items would be included on a form P11D. Now, this records the details of taxable benefits and expenses that were provided in the previous tax year. It's submitted to HMRC after the end of the tax year by the 6th of July. And you would also send an annual P11D-B, which contains the details of the employer Class 1A national insurance that you owe. So that is an annual submission. It's done in arrears, and it's sent after the end of the tax year. Payrolling, on the other hand, is done in real time. So this is when you process your BIKs through your payroll software. You'd be using a notional payment rather than a standard pay element because it is a non-cash item, and that will enable you to deduct the tax that's owed on that amount and report that in your FPS. So with a P11D, the tax is paid by the employee via an adjustment to their tax code. When you're payrolling benefits, the tax is deducted from your employee on their payslip, and that is paid over to HMRC in real time. And as you'll know, the deadline to submit an FPS is on or before your employee's pay date. Now, just to expand on payrolling, so as I say, this is where you deduct and pay tax due on your employee's benefits in kinds through your payroll software. And the way that this works is that the cash equivalent of that benefit is kind of apportioned throughout the year. So the annual cash equivalent is divided by the number of pay days in the year. That is added to your employee's taxable pay as a notional payment. So the employees will end up paying the tax due on that benefit value as part of the PAYE deduction on their payslip. Now, if you have opted to payroll your benefits, the form P11D is not required for those payroll benefits, but currently under the voluntary arrangements, which remain in force right up to the 5th of April 2027, you would need to still report a P11D-B. That's the return of your Class 1A national insurance contributions after the end of the tax year. So the key message here is that payrolling benefits is still currently voluntary and will be voluntary until April 2027. And another key point is that you must register with HMRC in order to payroll your benefits. So how does the registration work? Well, it's an online process. So if you are planning to payroll your benefits from April 2026, so you go in a year before it all becomes mandatory, you would need to do this before the start of the tax year. So if you are intending to payroll benefits for 2026 to 27, you would need to register with the service by the 5th of April 2026. What this process will involve is confirming which benefit types you want to payroll. So you can choose to payroll some benefit types, but not all. And once you've done that, you would need to write to your employees to explain to them that you will now be payrolling their benefits and what that means to them. And there's some great guidance in our knowledge base on our help centre and also on HMRC's website about those communications and what they need to include. So let's say you've registered to payroll benefits. What happens next? Well, HMRC will update your employees' tax codes to remove the benefits that were previously reported on a P11D. And then moving forward, from the start of the tax year where you've registered to payroll, you would need to add the taxable amount of the various benefits to your employees' pay and deducts the tax due on each pay date. That will then be reported to HMRC as part of a full payment submission. And I'm going to show you the type of information that's included currently in the FPS. But remember, you do still need to report your Class 1A national insurance on your P11DB at the end of the tax year. So you are able to payroll pretty much all benefit types with the exception of accommodation and beneficial loans. So there are some more complex calculations involved in those benefit types. So they still need to be included on a P11D whilst the voluntary arrangements are in place. And then from 2027, you will be able to voluntarily payroll those benefit types. So I wanted to give you a couple of simple examples on calculating the taxable amount. So the annual cash equivalent of the benefit you provide is calculated in exactly the same way you would do when including it on a P11D. But the difference is, when you're doing a P11D, you're looking at information that you already have, so it's a tax year that's already ended, whereas when you're payrolling your benefits, there may be scenarios where you don't actually know the full cash equivalent value. And this is when you either have to make estimates or you may need to recalculate benefits mid-year. But once you've established the cash equivalent of your benefit, or the annual cash equivalent, that is then divided by the number of pay days in the year. And that then gives you the taxable amount that you need to process through your payroll. So a couple of simple examples. The first one is for medical insurance. So we have a medical insurance policy where the annual premium is £300. So that is the annual cash equivalent. And we're running a payroll where employees are paid monthly and therefore have 12 pay days in the year. So to work out the taxable amount for that benefit, we would take the £300 annual amount, divide that by 12, and that would give us £25 per month. If you paid weekly, you would divide by 52, fortnightly divide by 26, or 4 weekly, you would divide that by 13. The other example we're just going to put up here is a company car. So this could be a company car that you've provided, or commonly these days, a company car would be classed as an electric car under a salary sacrifice scheme. So that is technically still a company car and it's reportable as a benefit. And with this, the annual cash equivalent is based on the car details. So things like the fuel type, the list price of the car, and the CO2 emissions, assuming it's not an electric car. So there are tools in the software, company car records, that will help you with this calculation, which we're going to see a little bit later on. But once you've established the annual cash equivalent, let's say we had a weekly paid employee with a company car, we had an annual cash equivalent of 9672. We know they're paid 52 times in this tax year. So we divide that by 52, giving us a taxable amount of £186 per week. So they are relatively simple examples. The complication really comes in if there have been changes mid-tax year. So we're talking maybe leavers, cars that have been replaced, increases in costs of things like medical insurance. And that will always involve having to do manual calculations to recalculate the annual amount and then adjust the remaining taxable amounts for the tax year so that they've paid the correct amount over the course of the year. And there are some worked examples in the HMRC guidance of how you would deal with these mid-year changes. So we are going to try and keep things simple in today's webinar, with this just being an introduction to payrolling benefits. So let's now take a look at how this all works in Sage 50 Payroll. So first thing we're going to explore is the benefit in kind pay elements. So these will be the notional payments that will be used to process the taxable amount for your payroll benefits. It will be included in your employee's taxable pay, but it would not be included in their gross pay amount or their net pay. So the overall effect of these pay elements is that the tax liability increases, so the employee pays the tax that is due. Now, benefit in kind pay elements are not new in Sage 50 Payroll. These have been around for several years, since HMRC formally brought in voluntary payrolling of benefits. And there is a checkbox within the pay element setting that can be selected for benefit in kinds. Now, that will disable all of the other pay element settings with the exception of national insurance. But it is important to understand that the national insurance on the pay element setting is Class 1 national insurance, which applies to employees and employers. If your benefit is subject to Class 1A national insurance paid by the employer, that is not currently payrolled. That's dealt with at the end of the tax year. And a great resource to check whether your benefit types are subject to either Class 1 or Class 1A national insurance is the A to Z of expenses and benefits on the gov.uk website. So I want to give you a quick demo of how to set up these pay elements. So let's jump into that now. So in Sage 50 Payroll, I'm just going to navigate to my company tasks, and then we're going to jump into pay elements. You'll see I've got some standard payments for basic, overtime, and bonus, and I've created a couple of extra payments for benefit in kinds, where I've given them quite a clear description. So payroll, benefit in kind, medical, and car. And if I show you the settings of the payment, you'll see that I've selected the benefit in kind checkbox. So as soon as you tick this, it disables most of the other fields. The benefit will always be taxable, and some benefit types are subject to Class 1 national insurance. So like I say, you need to check that on the HMRC guidance, and this is not Class 1A national insurance. So we've entered a description for this. We could set up default values if the same taxable amount is going to apply to all of our employees, or of course we can enter that in the individual employee records. And I've got a separate one because we also provide car benefits in this example. And if you needed to create any additional pay elements from the new option, you would fill in the details. And like I say, tick the benefit in kind box to create that type of pay element. Now, these will need to be assigned to the relevant employees, which can either be done individually or using global changes. So I already have an employee with one of these payments assigned to them. So you can see we've got our payrolled benefit for a company car, and I've calculated the monthly taxable amount to be entered here. So that is now assigned to the employee pre-tax, post-NI, but because it's a big payment, it will be treated as notional pay. Now, if you did need to assign these globally, perhaps if you're starting to payroll from the start of the new tax year, you can do so by selecting the relevant employees, go into tasks and global changes, and then come down to payments. And then from here, you've got the option to add the payment. So that would be a quicker way to add the pay element to multiple employees where required. So select the one you want to assign, click OK. So that's the first thing that I wanted to mention there, the pay element settings. And then we've seen to assign that, you would assign it in the same way as any other payment. And then you could enter the taxable amount that applies to each period as the default rate there within the employee record. Now, a lot of benefit types are quite simple in the way that the annual cash equivalent is calculated, because it is simply the value of that benefit. But there are some benefit types, and the one we're going to look at is company cars, where there's more of a calculation involved to determine the cash equivalent. And when it comes to company cars, which could be used for a company car you've provided to your employee, or an electric car salary sacrifice scheme that you've provided to your employees, which are also classed as benefits in kind, you would need to create company car records in Sage 50 Payroll, and that will then help you calculate the cash equivalent and report the required information to HMRC. So on screen here, we have an example of a company car record that I've created. So we've entered details such as the list price, the fuel type, the CO2 emissions, and the date that that car was available to the employee. And then there's a checkbox in the company car record to indicate that a car is being payrolled. So when you have that ticked, it means that you can then calculate the cash equivalent for the current tax year, which will be really useful in working out your taxable amount. And it also means that the details of that car will be included in your FPS. Now, under the voluntary arrangements for payroll in BICS, it is only company car details that are included, as well as the taxable amounts that are being payrolled. But as you'll discover later on in the future, there are some quite big changes to how that will work. So I'm going to show you how to create your company car records. You would also need to use the benefit in kind payment. So let's set that all up for one of my employees, and we'll just give you our next demo. So first I'll show you an existing employee who has a company car. So within the employee record, you'll notice there's a cars and fuel tab. And from here, based on the car registration, you can access the details of any company cars that have been recorded. So you might have done this if you're still doing a P11D in order to create a P46 car and to work out the Class 1A on the previous year's information. But do please note that once you start to payroll car benefits, you must not submit a P46 car. That's only for P11D benefits, and if you do send a P46 car for a car that you're payrolling, there's a chance that the employee could be taxed twice on that benefit. So we've got the car details entered here, first available back in 2024, so this has been available for all of the current tax year. And because I've got this box ticked that the car is being payrolled, you'll see here on the right hand side I've got my annual cash equivalent, and then when it comes to doing my P11DB, I'm also going to know my Class 1A national insurance. So based on this figure here, when I've assigned the pay element, I've divided that by 12, and that's given me my taxable amount. So this is how the employee is being taxed on the benefit, and the car details are what will be included in the FPS. So that was an existing one, but I do want to set up a new car record just so you can see that process. So I have a new employee, or an employee that's just joined our company's electric car salary sacrifice scheme. Now, that is technically a benefit in kind. So we do need to record the car details, and because we're payrolling our benefits, we do need to deduct the tax due. So if I go to my cars and fuel tab, I've got my option to create a new car here at the bottom of the screen. I'm going to click on that now, And then you would work through and complete this wizard to enter the details of the car that you've provided. So I'm going to quickly pop some details in now. This is a fully electric car that we've provided to the employee. We've got the date of registration, and the fuel type in this example is electricity only. So with electric cars, there's no CO2 emissions that apply. When I click onto next, we're going to pop in our list price, which would be provided usually by the company you're dealing with your electric vehicle lease scheme. And in this case, we're going to put the date that this car was first available to the employee, which was actually on the 1st of February of this year. So once I've got the car details entered and I click on to finish, I can check that I'm happy with the information here, and I'm then going to tick the box to say that this car is being payrolled. And as soon as I do that, it's giving me information for the current tax year. So we're currently in 25-26, and then it's showing me the cash equivalent and the Class 1A on this vehicle. Now this cash equivalent has been adjusted based on the fact that it was first used on the 1st of February. So it's not the annual amount, it's the adjusted amount from the 1st of February. And the reason why these schemes are so popular is that the current BIK percentage on electric cars is 3%. So the benefit of having a salary sacrifice arrangement far outweighs the amount of company car tax they would have to pay. So what it's telling me here is the cash equivalent for this benefit for the rest of this tax year is £241. I know that this employee has 2 paydays left in the year. So when I go into the pay elements, I can assign my benefit in kind payment. And for the default value, I'm going to take half of that amount, which is 120.50. And that is what we're going to payroll in February and March. So that's everything set up for these employees. Let's do a quick recap, and then we'll put this all together in our pay run. So yeah, company car records, again, they've existed in payroll for years. The current usage is to calculate cash equivalent values for company cars and fuel provided where applicable. If you're payrolling your company cars, it will include the car details in your FPS, and it can also be used after the end of the tax year to calculate your Class 1A. Don't forget as well though, you still need the BIC pay element for your payrolled company cars. You'd enter the taxable amount that you've calculated for each period. So that was a cash equivalent divided by the number of pay days in the year, or in this case, it was the number of pay days remaining in this tax year. So what we're going to do now is put all of that together, and we're going to take a look at the process of including benefits in kind in your payroll. So let's just jump straight back to the demo, and we're going to run my February pay run. So I'm just going to focus on the 3 employees who are receiving benefits in kind. I've already set my process date to the 28th of February, which will be my February pay date. And when I go into the enter payment screen, you can see my employee's usual salary amount. And this employee as well with the company car has the benefit in kind payment of £108. So looking at their gross pay, that is only reflecting the salary amount. But if I show you the summary tab, you'll notice that the taxable gross pay includes the benefit in kind. So the employee's tax liability is going up because they're paying their tax due on that company car, but that is not reflected in their gross or net pay. So the increased tax, of course, is deducted in the net pay. The value of that taxable amount, that £806, is not. Similarly, for my next employee, this was a medical insurance benefit. So it was based on an annual premium of £300. So we are payrolling £25 per month. So again, that's going through the payroll. And you'll notice that the taxable gross pay is £25 higher than the total gross pay. And for this third employee who's just joined our electric car salary sacrifice scheme, I've got the payroll benefit of 120.50. What I've also assigned to them is a salary sacrifice for the monthly payment that they're making to lease that car. So they're saving on tax and national insurance on the amount of the salary sacrifice, but they do have a tax liability based on this taxable amount. So a very quick look at some of the pre-update reports for these employees. So we'll have a look at a standard pay slip. I will bring up on screen now. So with the benefit in kind payments, they will have an asterisk next to them, which indicates that it is a notional payment. And we can see the difference for this period between gross for tax and total gross pay. We've got the medical benefit for this next employee. And for the third employee, we've got the benefit in kind. Because they're in a salary sacrifice scheme, we've also got our salary sacrifice pay element. Other reports don't really call out the payroll BICs separately, but the sort of thing you would notice if you run a payment summary part 1, for example, is what I pointed out earlier. Taxable gross figures include the benefit in kind amount, total gross does not. So we can kind of infer to some degree the taxable amounts from the difference between these two columns. So once you've ran all of your pre-update reports, you would complete payroll by updating the records. And then to report the benefit in kind, you would do a full payment submission, just in the normal way. And again, you're not going to see anything specifically for the benefit in kind on this submission screen, but behind the scenes, it will be reporting the amount of benefit, payroll benefits. And for employees with company cars, it will also be reporting the car details. So we would submit that to HMRC in the usual way. And just behind the scenes in the file that is sent to them, it is going to include the BIK information. So that very quickly is how it works. Just to recap the payroll process with BIKs. So we use the BIK pay element to process the notional payment, charging the tax that's due, but not increasing the gross or net pay. That is then displayed on the pay slips, as you saw, as a separate line with a star next to it, indicating that that is a notional payment. And if you were to check things like the taxable gross compared to the gross, you'll see the difference in those figures. You send your full payment submission in the usual way, and that will include all the required BIK information. And that is just a screenshot of the XML structure behind the scenes. So this is the information that actually goes to HMRC. And you'll see each period it reports the benefits taxed via payroll. So just a total amount currently. And for car benefits only, during the voluntary arrangements, it will also send the details of the car. So that includes the annual cash equivalent. And it gives you a flavour of how HMRC will start using this information in the future to sort of check on the benefits reported. Now, last thing I just want to cover in the demo is a useful report if you need to sort of report back on the value of benefits in kinds that you've processed. So we don't have a specific report for it, but one of my favorite reports, highly versatile, the payment type history detailed report, has a filter option when you're in the criteria values where you can select specific pay elements. So this would be a great way of looking back historically on how much you have payrolled for specific pay elements so that you could do a bit of reconciliation perhaps at the end of the year. So just to finish up by showing you how to run that report. Just going to select the 3 employees that currently have payroll benefits. I'm going to go into my main reports option at the top of the screen here. I've added this to my favorites payment type history detailed. It's actually located in the employee folder. So if you scroll all the way down, you'll come across this one. I am going to run it for the tax year to date, but it's this criteria here, the payment type. If you open this drop down and select in, that's then going to let you choose specific payments. So I know they're my two PBIC payments. I've labeled them as such. And that's then going to show me for this tax year so far how much I've payrolled. So I can see that I'm on track to have payrolled the full annual equivalent for these benefits. It's sort of displayed like so. So that would be my recommended report if you are need to report in on any of your payrolled benefits. So all of that is how it currently works under the voluntary arrangements for payrolling benefits. But as I'm sure you'll be aware, the government have announced that there will be mandatory payrolling of benefits from April 2027. So I'm just going to give you kind of a summary of how that works. And then we're going to bring in Steve, our product manager, who's going to tell you a bit more about our plans for the mandatory payrolling. So first thing to make clear is that this is now being introduced from April 2027, not April 2026, as previously announced. HMRC have given more time for employers, payroll providers to get ready for this change. The change is that it will become mandatory to report income tax and Class 1A national insurance for most benefits in kind via payroll software. So a key difference between that and the voluntary arrangements is that the Class 1A will be paid in real time, so not at the end of the tax year as it currently is. When it comes in April 2027, it will be possible on a voluntary basis to payroll accommodation and loans. However, P11D can and still will be used for those benefit types after 2027. And the big change here is there will be a requirement for more data to be included in the FPS, providing a breakdown of the different benefit types, information such as commencement dates, essentially the same information that a lot of you currently report on a P11D. So it's almost like doing a mini P11D on every FPS submission. And you can actually read the interim guidance and legislation on the link provided. So before we finish up, I thought it would be good to get the thoughts of our senior product manager, Steve, who's on the call with us. He's been answering questions behind the scenes. So if I can bring Steve onto the call, and we're going to run through just a couple of questions. So welcome, Steve. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thanks, Duncan. Thanks for the invite.
So first thing I'd like to ask you is, what are you seeing as the key challenges for the payroll professionals when this comes in 2027?
I think what you just touched on, Duncan, is it's a bit like doing a mini P11D every pay period. So the challenge, although the product's going to deal with the calculations and helping you put some of the information through, the biggest challenge will be around where changes happen and making sure that the information coming into yourself that you need for your payroll is up to date. We know payroll from a general purpose is difficult where you're chasing timesheets and clock-ins and things like that from your employees. This is another source of information that you have to be right on top of. So realistically, the process shouldn't be difficult. The managing of the information in on a timely manner is going to be really critical, I believe.
Absolutely. So that would be probably the main challenge. So you touched upon how the payroll is going to deal with it. So what can you tell us about how our Sage Payroll solutions will be updated to support this, particularly Sage 50 Payroll, which our audience today will be using?
Yeah, sure, Duncan. And it will cover our Sage Business Cloud Payroll as well. We're working as a joint organisation on all the things we do from a legislation point of view. As where you went in and showed the pay element where you've got a benefit in kind flag, going forward, we're going to have actually a separate section around benefits in kind that are specifically for this, because there will be more information that you will need to supply. So one of the critical points about this is if you've registered for payroll and benefits, and you're already doing that, don't think that moving into 2027 there's no change for you, because the change will still be quite a lot for yourselves as well, and that's around how much information you will need to supply to HMRC in the FPS. So you showed a really great example of the car, and the car benefit is actually in there, its own little section. The one above it just said total benefits. Going forward, there'll be 7 categories of benefit types. So as part of the setup, we'll help with this. There will be a drop down, the sections will be there, but you'll still have to choose this. You'll have to choose which benefit type area you want to submit it for. There are a few types of medical, there's one for car, somebody in the chat mentioned vans, things like that. They'll all be covered, where you'll put your own description in, and what that will mean is on the FPS, each section will be completed per employee. But the easy thing will be you'll be choosing that from a pick list. So to give you that pick list, we're going to need to give you a new screen where you'll fill that in. What we'll also be looking to do is make sure that where you can record the annual values, the product can look at how many periods you've got left, and it can also show you if there's any missed periods where your adjustment values need to be taken into account. That'll also help with mid-year changes, because quite a lot of providers will change their benefits. We have medical at Sage, and that doesn't change tax year, it changes mid-year. So you may have several lines you may need to adjust because there's been an increase in and a charge and things like that. So the products are going to do that in both our cloud products and our desktop products to make sure there'll be a full input screen. There will be an interaction with the user, so you can choose the benefit area, like I've said, and again, there'll be more substantive guidance and help material within the same screens.
So that's great to hear. Obviously, a lot of thought is going into this. And finally, Steve, how else are Sage planning to support our customers with this quite major change?
So I think one of the things about Sage is the webinar today. Duncan and getting ahead of things is going to be really critical, and we're going to continue to roll these out once we get probably through payroll year end this year. It's a really critical time. We'll move into next year, and we're already working with user groups to show the development of the products, both the cloud and the desktop. If you'd like to be involved, please put that in your information when you've registered for this webinar, or if you'd like to be included further. We will be sharing that through some webinars and some user groups, as I say, going forward. But our usual huge amount of information around we'll have a section in the knowledge base which is just around payroll and benefits. We'll have a really big hub like we always do, as well as articles, blogs, and as material comes in and any changes happen, we'll share those where we can. Not every detail of payroll and benefits has actually been finalized by HMRC. We've been working with them for about 2 years on this, because originally it was going to be 6th of April 2006. One of them is around how the Class 1A will be reported. Will it be in the FPS or will it be in the EPS? Whichever it's in will make it easy. The EPS is already a well-trodden path, and there will be reports. Again, you've shown some benefit reports or ways to get information about the reports. We'll probably put 1 or 2 new reports in there that are actually a little bit more automated around the benefit in kind side as well. So there'll be huge support areas on this, because we know it will be critical. And again, our teams will all be heavily trained on this, so they'll be able to answer any queries and questions as they come up.
That's fantastic. Thank you so much, Steve, for your time there and for your insights. And hopefully that's reassured our audience that we've got this covered. So we've got a few minutes left in the webinar. What we'll do is we will stay online behind the scenes to continue answering as many questions as we can. As I say, we may not get round to answering every one of your questions, but we will do our very best to get some answers out there. If you want a copy of the handouts or slides, don't forget to download those before you leave. And I have included some useful links in the handout as well. So it's got the full guidance for the current voluntary payrolling, as well as the interim guidance for the mandatory payrolling, and links to the relevant support articles. As always, our help centre is available 24/7, so you can access that at sage.co.uk/help. And you can also find all of our e-learning, certification and bite-sized learning at Sage University. So what we're going to do for the remainder of the time, and as I say, we'll try and stick around a little while longer because I'm sure it's been busy in the Q&A, is we're going to continue answering your questions. But while we do that, I'm just going to pop a quick poll on screen. As Steve just mentioned, we do have a user group that are assisting us and feeding in to the improvements that we'll be making to the software in preparation for mandatory payrolling. So if that's something that you'd like to get involved with, I'm going to pop a poll on screen where you can just indicate that you're interested in taking part in that research, and I will pass your details on to Steve and the team. So we'll pop that up for the next few minutes, and I'm going to go away on mute just to help out with some of the Q&A. Thanks so much for joining us. I will be back to say goodbye when we're ready to wrap this up. So I did want to just take this opportunity to thank you all for joining us at the webinar today. It's been great to see so many of you attend, and look out for more sessions in the future, particularly as we approach April 2027, when all of this becomes mandatory. We will send you a follow-up email, which will include a recording to today's webinar. So look out for that arriving in your inbox in about an hour's time. And when you exit the webinar, we will invite you to take a survey. So it'd be great to know your thoughts on today's session. If you could complete that survey, I'd very much appreciate it. With that said, from myself and the team here at Sage, thanks once again for joining us today. Enjoy the rest of your week, and we hope to see you on some other webinars in the future. It's goodbye for now.